Alright, ladies and gentlemen, on the concept of why we should go to Mars, what we have to look at is the current state of Earth. We are at a planet where we have to maintain below 1.5 degrees centigrade change by the year 2050 in order to avoid what the United Nations report called a catastrophic climate, yeah, that's okay. A catastrophic climate events plural. The state of the world is not in the best shape right now. What we have, however, is we have in our own solar system a planet that is within the Goldilocks zone, has plentiful water just frozen on the surface, with has a surface area 5 times that of the moon alone, something that we historically believe to have been capable, well, we believe had water itself, and from there we could build up. And according to Elon Musk himself, the head of SpaceX, the founder of SpaceX, the company that is working with NASA, has contracts with NASA, is the leading technological voice in the United States about space travel along with NASA, talked about how the price to get to Mars would be about $200,000 per person, so long as we get 1 million people. And with 1 million people, the amount that comes out to is $200 billion. While that sounds like a lot of money, we have to recognize that the trip to Mars costs 440 days. You can't send up 1 million people in 440 days. Each year, you'll be able to send up 100, 150 at most. We're talking about $200 billion invested for the next decades to come. And the U.S. military budget in the 2000-year fiscal year alone was $590 billion. 3 times that the cost that it would take to colonize Mars in a year alone, not spread over decades to come. This is something that we can invest in today. We can transport people to the planet. We can begin the scientific research with the beginning colonizers. Figure out what there is to know about Mars. This is a place rife with potential, where we can send the human race. We see the planet Earth is not doing the best right now. We have the ice caps raising. We have 70% of the population lives on the coastal cities in this country. And we see relatively dramatic increases to sea level across the board, with the ice caps melting slowly. We have 70% of the population of the human race in danger. Maldives alone is thinking that they're going to be submerged underwater by 2040. I don't remember the exact number, but relatively soon. The planet, we can do so much, but what we need is a place to go back to, a place where we have colonies, where we can send the people that no longer have homes, where we can create a new civilization with brand new resources, a climate that actually needs global warming, not when we sure as hell don't need it anymore. We have a place that we can send people, that we can start a brand new civilization. We can offload as much of what we have into Mars' ecosystem as we need. What's the time check? 1 minute. 1 minute? Okay. Okay. And then I know that there are some people who say that Mars is significantly closer, significantly cheaper to establish bases. But the difference between Mars and the Moon is, not only is Mars 5 times larger when it comes to their surface area, Mars has abundant levels of water in their ice caps, which are all over the planet. The Moon, on the other hand, while it does have some amount, NASA itself only considers it enough to maintain small habitations, stations, in order to be able to staff something, to create further excursions into space, onto places that are better suited for the human race's needs. And Mars, at this juncture, at this time, we see what's happening to the planet. We see ice caps melting. We have the 70% of the planet
I do like that one.
What, that alarm or this alarm?
Both.
Both.
Well done.
You may begin when you're ready.
Thank you, Mark. It's the end of the world. Don't fix it. Don't stay here. Find a new home. Go to Mars. I don't watch that much sci-fi anymore, but it sounds like we're gonna watch like Matt Damon, try to escape off the planet and try to come back. The argument I heard was that the reason we need to colonize Mars is because it's game over here. We're giving up. It's like 2012 all over again. It's the apocalypse. We have to flee and find a new home. It's interesting that the argument for colonization is that we have an imminent disaster coming to destroy the world. Quite frankly, even if the oceans did rise, it seems pretty evident that the Earth would still be incredibly more habitable than Mars. In any case, the price to build a colony on Mars is far more expensive than that of the Moon. And you were saying that the temperature's rising on the Earth. It sounds like there'd be plenty of water here if you ever needed to get water to, say, a moon base. The idea of colonization, there's some benefits to it. I mean, I'll be the first to admit that. It sounds exciting. That's why I was in sci-fi in the first place. But if you're going to colonize, we don't actually, quite frankly, know how we could start doing this. Starting with Mars, where the price would be exorbitant, and where it would take over a month to get there if things went wrong or you need to do update deliveries, it sounds like it would make much more sense to start with something smaller. Like you said, the Moon. No, there's not ice caps there, but you'd still have to go and melt that. Any shipments that you send out, because you would still need to send shipments to Mars, at least to get it running, it would take only a few days to get things there. It seems like a safer option if colonization, this expensive plan of yours, is something you do want to do a trial run, like the Moon, before you go out and we start doing something on Mars. And it seems a bit disingenuous to only send a few 100,000 people off to Mars if you really think it is the end of the world on Earth. I haven't been convinced of what you're saying, for one, that it truly is the end of the world. Nor does it seem like we have the resources or the expertise and knowledge to be able to maintain some sort of base on Mars at the moment. We've never done this sort of thing before. As I was saying, it seems practical and reasonable to get some practice on a smaller scale, close satellite of ours. And nothing's closer than the Moon. We have right here. Any reason we go to Mars and we actually do make some kind of base, it's not going to be for population pressure. I wouldn't even make that argument if I were you. If we were to make some sort of base, quite frankly, it would be for research. That is the argument I would go for if I were you, because those are the reasons that we are actually looking for. And what NASA is looking into, and what other groups are looking into, is a moon base seems like what we would actually be going for first. And the bases would be for research purposes primarily. Because you can get more information if you have people on the ground, but that's not even colonization. Those are research bases. It seems impractical and unreasonable to start colonizing other planets and abandoning our home and foretelling another 2012 that it's the end of the world soon. So we should abandon our home. I think we should stick to the facts and look at the reasonable positions for space exploration, because there are genuine reasons to go to other planets and see what they have to offer. We can learn some things. But colonizing and abandoning our home, it just doesn't seem right to me. Okay.
Thank you.
Duncan, are you ready?
Yes, in just a second.
You may begin when you're ready.
Yes, thank you. Yes, to begin with, there are many threats to Earth, not just climate change. My opponent described the rising sea levels and the rising temperatures, but there's also other threats, such as asteroids that could hit us, such as nuclear war, such as the hole in the ozone layer when it was to become worse, or disruption at the base level of our ecosystem. There are many potential problems of a disease, a pandemic, as have been known to happen in the past. What if our antibiotics cease to work as effectively as they once did and humanity needs a new place to go? Furthermore, having a base on Mars is uniquely useful because there may well be life on Mars, as evidenced by the water there. And the moon is certainly worth exploring as well. We have no problem with exploring the moon, only that we should then go to Mars. In fact, building off our opponent's idea of colonizing the moon, it would be easier to colonize the Mars if we colonize the moon first, because we can use it as an out base. I think our opponents underestimate the distance from here to the moon, however. The distance from here to the moon is about 30 times the circumference of Earth. It is a huge, enormous distance. Getting water, food, etc. there is not cheap at all. However, if you could build a self-sustaining colony on Mars that could simply take water from the ice caps there and grow its own food, then that would be vastly easier than transporting food and water to a lunar colony. Plus, the moon is unable to provide plants without us bringing water to the moon, which is not very feasible in the first place. Bringing mankind to the moon has to Mars has global benefits. It inspires all of mankind, whereas it only takes a small, tiny portion of the American defense budget. It gives everyone on Earth something to hope for, something to look forward to, which is something that we need and have needed for several decades but haven't had. Our opponents, it doesn't really make sense for them to both endorse colonizing the moon and criticize the idea of colonization altogether. Because if they're willing to say that we should colonize for the purpose of research, why not colonize the Mars? What were about it? A small operation on the moon would also lower all the costs to reach Mars. So we're with or without the lunar base. It could go either way. What we're emphasizing is that we should go to Mars and we should establish a base there for research purposes. Our opponent said that if we did go to Mars, it should be for the purpose of research, not to provide a kind of refuge for mankind. That is a false dichotomy. It can be both. It's true that we can't save humanity by transporting people there one busload at a time, but it is true that we can save humanity by transporting a few people there, providing a base of people having children to repopulate a new planet if something should happen to Earth. The hope would not be that we'd move everyone from Earth to Mars, which is not feasible. The hope would be that we'd have a continuing line of humanity, continuing if something did happen to the Earth, which is very feasible. Four groups would not yet dramatically change Mars, and right now Mars is rife with research potential. Many new areas of research are promising. For example, they've recently found methane related organic compounds in the atmosphere of Mars, indicating that possibly life could have developed there to create and generate that methane. They've also found organic molecules there, like amines, which are part of amino acids, which are important because they could signal that something there is building proteins. But these proteins may have decayed long ago and ejected these amino acids, and the amines in the atmosphere indicate that once life might have existed on Mars, but how will we know? Unless we land people there to do the actual research to figure out what's going on in a way much more scientifically grounded than any mere machine or robot could do it. Plus, who knows the medical potential of such discoveries, and who knows the scientific potential of such discoveries. How much time do I have left?
1 minute.
Right, so getting to Mars, it increases the aspirations of mankind, it increases mankind's confidence in what it can do. If people see that we can get to Mars, they might start to think, what else can we do? Can we get to the next planet? Can we get to the moons around Jupiter? Can we get to the moons around Saturn? It also provides a unifying project. If there are people from multiple countries working on the same great project, it brings countries together and provides a platform for international cooperation, which has benefits to defense, to the economy, to scientific research, to all kinds of things, and it's humanity closer together, giving us fewer reasons to go to war and more reasons to cooperate in the future. And also, there are times when there's a great question mark And who knows what benefits may be within that question mark. There were benefits to that, to biological sciences when scientists were doing it in like the 1920s. And they later found out about penicillin and vaccines and all this stuff to save those lives. Who knows what might be on Mars?
Are you looking to do a custom sound? Because then you could do like a gavel. That would be a cool
That
custom.
would be cool.
So I got 5 minutes.
Yes, you
Yeah,
have 5 minutes,
5
Peter.
minutes.
You may begin whenever you're ready.
Okay. I'm ready. I think all our opponents are saying that we have a lot of money and we want to spend it on Mars. We want to colonize Mars to solve the problem on the Earth. But the problem is, let's make an analogy here. Like, if you are in a marriage that things are not going to work, like because of something really similar to the global warming, are you going to divorce him or her because there's something wrong? I think by considering the amount of money we are going to spend on the exploration of the Mars, I think we should better put the money into scientific research, which includes the research in the Moon and in the Mars, instead of the colonization of it. Because as the first speaker has said that we're going to need like half the budget of the U.S. to like military budget to invest in Mars so we can colonize Mars. It's a lot of money. It's 50% of the total budget. It's really a lot of money. What if our component, like, if we are the United States, we face threats from the outside, like Russia. Russia is continuously developing its nuclear weapon. It's not out of the U.S. will to develop nuclear weapon. It's the threat from the outside. If we spend all of the money, like, to the space, so what if we don't have enough money to protect our own citizens, protect ourselves? And second of all, even if we arrive at the Mars, we have the money, we arrive at the Mars, we cannot ensure that we will arrive or land, so to speak, safely. And of course, you can manage the risks while you're going on the space travel. But according to research, the longer the distance you travel, the higher the risk for the casualty or for the so-called fatalities. Like, according to research, there are totally 302 manual space flights, 4 of which ended with a total 18 fatalities. So that is 1.3% of the accident. Think of how tragic the Columbia disaster and Apollo 1 is in US history. And there are also a lot of disasters that have not been recorded by other governments. For example, Chinese government, they are only disclosing the good stuff, not the bad stuff, like Russia's. And so we believe that this number of accident rates is like not emphasized. It may be higher because there are many cases, many tasks that have been not included in the task, in the calculation. And even if we arrive at Mars safely, there's chances that because the third speaker has told us that there is potential germs found by our detectors of the sent by the US, I think. There's protein and germs on Mars, and it is alien to human beings, and the other one is true. So if human beings come to the Mars and human beings are threatened by those germs, there is chances that, which is very high, that human beings will die or the germs will die. Either way, we have lost some life. Are the lives are destined to die because of the colonization of we aliens from Earth to the Mars? I don't think so. Moreover, even if you arrive at the Mars without any risk and you live healthily and you can live in harmony with all the germs, let me assume that we still have a lot of difficulties we need to resolve. Like, life there must be very boring. We got no TV, poor network. It takes like days or years to send emergency message from Mars to Earth. What if your doctor dies and you don't have a doctor to cure your disease or allergy and you need it very urgently? You send it from Mars to the Earth. It takes about several months, and then you die. So this is so assumption. It is a case that can possibly happen if we just send hundreds of people to Mars, because we can only find like 1 or 2 in hundreds to be a qualified doctor. And even if we have a lot of doctors, we cannot ensure that all of them are qualified. So the demand is obviously higher than the supply. So that's the reason why we shouldn't stay there. Yeah, based on above, I'm proud to close.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You now have 2 minutes
Two
for
minutes. And who
prepare for
crosses first?
cross-examination. You begin your cross-examination first.
Okay.
If we don't go to Mars, what is the long-term plan for Earth? What happens when we do eventually have a nuclear war?
Well, I believe we had a debate first semester where we talked about, I think one of you argued for the Paris Climate Accords and the need for the U.S. to intervene, something like that. We've already talked about strategies that the Earth needs to take to.
Isn't some disaster going to happen eventually? Like just given enough time, will something happen eventually? Nukes or climate
There's
change or
always
disease.
something happening.
Right. So won't something eventually existential happen?
Well, something's always going to happen to humans.
And should we not plan for that? Should we not
Prepare
look
for it?
forward to that? We already see multiple things in front of us that could change, that could significantly alter or kill off
I
humankind.
think it's a question of should we run away or should we deal with the problem here?
That's the first start, isn't it? Wouldn't you agree though that we can do
Why-
both?
why not
Wouldn't you
build-
agree? Why would you say that the
Why not
temperature-
build a base at the bottom of the ocean, right?
Well,
I mean,
A,
it's
because-
safe. It's safe at the bottom
Well,
of
A,
the
because
ocean.
the ocean pressure.
It's expensive.
The
to
water
get
pressure would be
there.
far too much
It's a
for
pretty
it.
fair.
Why can't we just build a base on Mars and defend against existential threats simultaneously? Why do we have to only face the existential threats?
Even the quite a few scientists who I've been looking into don't see it being reasonable, feasible for us to actually do that. They see research based.
Isn't it worth a try?
Well, the ones who do see it being worth a
Do
try,
you see it as being worth a try?
not yet.
Why not?
We
We
don't
don't think
even know if we can do it yet.
Yeah, we don't
That's
think
what
it's being worth a
trying
try
means.
because
That's what trying means.
Failure
It's-
means death, which is the very
Yeah.
thing you're trying to avoid.
We
What do you
think
mean-
it's
what do you mean
not-
failure
So
means
you're
death?
sending people to a potentially unsafe
Like
place.
4 of them at a time. Wouldn't you agree that's a tiny price to pay compared to thousands of lives?
Well, the intention is we're doing this because Earth is on the wayside.
No, the intention is to do it because of the risks that Earth could go into the wayside.
We have to create a potential plan. We need to have
Is
a
Mars?
Yeah.
What's the risk of Mars, in your opinion? I'm just trying to
Yeah.
think. Are there any risks that go along with?
Of course there is. There were risks to everything. When we went to
Yeah,
Mars,
I'm of the
there were
opinion
risks
that
with everything.
Mars is more dangerous.
if we're gonna
than Earth.
start worrying the Earth, we're gonna start war like nuclear war in the Mars. Like if we don't solve the problem, we keep like emit the carbon. We will get global warming in another planet, and then another planet with this sweet planet.
How can you be so sure?
That's possible, right?
It's
but it's
possible.
possible.
Well, how
It
do
is
you
Yeah,
more
but
likely.
we have a lot more technology now. We will not
Uh-huh.
have the same knowledge. We could.
But we
will
cannot make sure that technology will bring us some good stuff. It may be some bad stuff. And by going so far to such a long distance, it can give us a lot of risks.
Like what?
Like if we are going to the Mars, we can't even survive. We cannot even like.
That was
remain so
interesting.
fast.
Yes.
Yeah, 3 minutes to go by.
The cross examinations.
Yeah,
So
it's
it
power
just
cross.
started.
That's the most fun part, Chris.
Yeah.
Yes. You may begin when you are ready.
Yeah. First off, I just want to start with a quote. This is from Amanda Hendricks, a senior scientist at Planetary Science Institute. She says, quote, "I think it makes sense to go to Mars with humans to test technologies and to do scientific experiments, a short-term visit or visits. I do not think it makes sense to establish a long-term human settlement on Mars, only because it is not desirable as a long-term destination due to radiation concerns."
One scientist among many.
What was that?
One scientist among many.
I can read you a variety of quotes of people all saying the same thing.
You could spend the whole time
That
there.
Mars-
It would only be a tiny subset of
Do you-
the scientists who study this stuff. You need more than one opinion.
Mars is more dangerous than Earth. Yes or no?
True.
at this
Okay.
point.
No, of course.
We
What,
need
at
to
what
do
point in time
research.
do you think Earth is going to be more dangerous to live on than Mars?
That's not the point. The point is that Earth could face an
At what point
existential
is
threat.
At what point is Earth going to not be habitable? Do you think?
If it's sufficiently large,
When do you think it's not going to be?
the main threat is that a sufficiently large asteroid should hit the Earth. and that's
How long do we have before the apocalypse?
About 200,000 years. Most estimates go every 200,000 years, an asteroid big enough to do major damage to the Earth hits.
We also have current
So why aren't
estimates.
we investing
We're-
in asteroid missiles? Could
Because
an
we can do
asteroid
both.
hit the Mars
Because we
base?
can do both. Yes.
At least on Earth, you can defend against an asteroid. You can't
Actually,
on
both.
Mars.
Of course you can do both. If you can build an asteroid defense system on Earth, you can do it on Mars. And anyway, it's about having your eggs not all in one basket. Why would you needlessly put all your eggs on Earth?
Historically, around the world, we see people always having a backup plan, something that they can turn to should everything should shit hit the fan. We had them design the Maginot Line, which
Do you think
didn't
good
work.
ideas should be vetted? Do you think good ideas should
Not when
be
they're urgently needed.
200,000 years?
We also
Yeah,
have estimates by
urgent when you're talking about
2100
things
where the water levels, the ice caps will be completely melted. Where
So we shouldn't vet. We shouldn't vet ideas.
Not when they're
Shouldn't we-
desperately needed. No. There's a time to
So you
vet, and there's
guys,
a time to stop,
you
drop, and
don't
roll.
think Earth's not going to be habitable soon, but you also say it's desperate.
We don't know. That's the whole point.
At least you can admit that,
Admit what?
right? That you don't know what's
It's a
going on
risk.
here.
No. We know. We know that it's a probability. That there is a chance. That is what we know.
So we're going to Mars because of asteroids.
No,
We
it's
go.
going because the asteroids
The
for any other
planetary
reasons.
scientists, the Planetary Science Institute, the scientists there do not think that it
You've only
makes
named
sense.
one, and that's only a tiny subset of the total.
Do you want me to name more? I offered it.
You can't. You need to have a large number of people signing off on some
I do.
petition or
The
something.
people who most want us to actually make a colony on Mars are more celebrity figures like Elon Musk and Bill Nye. When you talk to actual scientists,
Saying that celebrities are
who
for it doesn't mean that it's a bad idea. If the dumbest guy.
I'm talking about actual science. Actual
No,
scientists.
you're saying that celebrities
know-
are for it, therefore it's a bad idea. That doesn't make any kind of sense at all.
Do you think that scientists should actually back an idea? Because you were for the issues of climate change, and I'm sure you had some research on that. I think you should have research behind your idea as well.
You have 2 minutes to prepare for your final statements.
Should we do?
Okay, so to begin with, you talked a lot about how much it would cost. We look at the U.S. military budget, not the entire national world joining together, which is what the hope would be to go. Russia has already agreed to do a 30% joint task force with the United Nations to colonize, to fund research into going to Mars. We can see ahead of us climate change, something that is having very little done. We already have $306 billion in the United States alone being caused from climate change, and yet we have countries pulling out of the Paris Climate Accords. We have heads of states refusing to accept that this is a problem. We understand that ice caps are going to melt, that the possibility of nuclear war is ever present, and then we have all of these risks. What we want is not to create a new Earth, to not fund, or to not...
1 minute.
Okay.
Right, when you're playing Russian roulette, you don't worry about which way to run. You don't worry about how to stop playing or the excuses that you give to the other players. You stop playing Russian roulette by any means necessary, and this is what it comes down to. Eventually, there will be an asteroid that hits, or a nuclear war, or some guy with a nuke somewhere will make a mistake, and that will be the beginning of the end, or some pandemic will come. This is not to spread fear, it's to face a realistic concern that eventually a silver bullet will come towards Earth. And when it happens, we need a backup plan. And that backup plan is Mars. A system that is sustainable, unlike the moon. A system that can keep going, a system that has great potential for scientific research. A system that can tap from water directly from the ice caps there on Mars, both in the north and in the south. We need a new home because this one will inevitably get ruined by something. It's a matter of time. And even if it wasn't, the risk is too great. And it is. It is an inevitability. For that reason, we need a new colony on Mars to keep the human race going.
You may begin when you're ready.
So first of all, we talk about the budget then. Yeah, it's not a whole budget, it's military budget. And if we count all the military budget and the whole budget into consideration, and we put our money into Mars, it's still quite a lot of money. And if you are talking about possibility, if such amount of money is for sure to put into practice, they cannot for 100% or even over 50%, 50% for not something good. It's just possibility, which we believe that it's not necessarily for us to resolve the problem on Earth, which is one of the biggest we could tell it, which is first, nuclear war, second, global warming. We can use other ways to resolve the problem, because the root cause of nuclear war is nuclear weapons, and root cause of global warming is the emission of carbon dioxide. If you move to another planet, things will happen, because the way people live is the same. It will happen maybe that's 10 or 100 years or centuries ago, and moreover, you are just accelerating the disaster, because now we are living pretty well, and we are saying that global warming is coming. We have signed the Paris Agreement, although U.S. has withdrawn it later after Trump stepped in, but we are doing some actions as a world to curb globalization by reducing the carbon emission, and this is also another backup plan for us to resolve the problem. Moreover, this plan is more cost effective. It will definitely cut down the carbon emission level, and it will ease the fact and address the issue of global warming. And just as the partner has said, the scientists' point of view are research-based. They want some objective views that we should put some energy to research instead of the illusion of colonization of Mars. And you're just using media and everything to frighten the grass. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks for the debate, everyone.
Yeah.
Very good.
Should shake hands, but okay.
Oh, we have to. Oh,
Yeah.
we have to do the handshake.
Oh, handshake.
Ooh,
Do it.
that's a fancy one.
This is the handshake.
Gotta do the turn. Okay. A real handshake. That's good.
Do you know who won it was?
No.
He's working.
Do we each do one, or do we do them in a group?
We do them as a group. Okay. That is not a chair. I thought I would like
I
the
think
one
it's
that I
better.
wait. Okay.
It's about the wrist. So we're planning to do that and either way out.
Oh yeah, there's always the risk, so you need to establish as soon as possible what the goal is to create a set of systems in place that not only can do research but can grow, unlike bunkers or underwater things like small settlements on the
Sorry, I had
moon
another
Right.
meeting.
that are incapable of being self-sufficient nor capable of further
We don't need to go up to the moon. We just need to go up to the planets that here on Earth.
We're recording this for the work fair.
the possibility of
Yeah.
the atom in you, something to go off to, something that can thrive, something that can create a planet of its own. We don't need to establish another Earth. We don't need to. The point is to mitigate costs and not only.
I got it.
The 2 minutes.
Recording? Hello, YouTube.
Oh shit.
Okay. I think I remember now.
Okay. Welcome to our vlog. This is MDS, and today we've got some sick debates coming to you from Madtown. I'm your host, Alex Richards, and this is MDS.
There you go.